How's it going, everyone? You might be able to notice I sound a little bit different today. That's because, well, I'm currently sick with COVID. Past week or so, I've been pretty under the weather, not feeling too great. So I'm gonna try and power through this video because I did actually find something today that was very interesting that I can't believe I hadn't heard of before in all my years of being around Saab. And that is a concept that they came out with in the mid-80s called the EV-1. But we're going to just be simply going over a couple cool articles I found on it, talking about a lot of really interesting concepts and things that they introduced in this, believe it or not, concept car that obviously never made it to production, including a famous movie that this car actually was seen in. I'm going to go through two articles here. The first one being this article from Motor Trend, and the second one not really being an article, but more so the Wikipedia page, which just has some additional information on it about the car itself. First, let's take a look at this Motor Trend article here. It states the Saab EV-1 concept was an EV in name only. Of course, nowadays when we see the name EV, we assume it stands for electric vehicle or a car that's, well, not powered by a gas engine. But back in the 80s, or at least according to Saab, EV didn't stand for electric, it stood for experimental vehicle, the one being experimental vehicle 1, the first concept that they came out with under that name. Starting off here, I'll show you guys some cool pictures of it because it has a rather unique design. You can see right off the bat, it does borrow a couple of styling characteristics from other Saabs from the era, mainly the 900 and also the 9000 had come out around that time. First one being this grille, to me looks identical to the one on the classic 900. It looks like they literally just took the grille from a 900 and pretty much transposed it onto this front bumper and went with it. But a lot of the 900s around that time also had gray bodies around the bottom. They either had the SPGs, obviously had the SPG kits on the side as well, but the bumpers were usually all in a similar gray color to this, so I noticed that. And thirdly was the wheels. They're not 3-spokes straight off of the 900, but they are 3-spoke and they kind of share the same center caps, as you might be able to tell. So obviously the styling in itself was super unique. The light bar going across the back, this almost like a side exit exhaust in the rear quarter. Looking at this article from Motor Trend though, it starts talking about some of the interesting features that this concept had. The first being solar panels mounted on the roof that power the cabin cooling fan. Now, from what I can assume, the cabin cooling fan is essentially the air conditioner. There are a few cars that have been produced in recent years that do have weird features like that. I think Mercedes did it with some of their Maybachs. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And obviously one of the most well-known ones is Fisker doing it on the roof of their cars. Despite it not looking like it, this car was actually heavily based off of the 900 Turbo. So with that means, again, not being an electric vehicle, it actually had the same power plant, the turbo 4-cylinder, as the 900 Turbo, but it produced 282 horsepower all to the front wheels. For reference, the 900 Turbo of that time produced somewhere between 140 and 160 horsepower. So in essence, they basically doubled that and still kept it all to the front wheels and somehow thought that would be a good idea. From what I read, it apparently had crap tons of understeer. I'm sure it also had traction issues with all that power. But I mean, come on, that's pretty freaking cool. Just to kind of put that into perspective, my S3 right here only makes about 10 horsepower more than that. Now, based off of what we'll read in Wikipedia, you can see that the S3 is able to put down the power a lot better, just based off of things like 0 to 60 times. But it's just crazy to think 282 horsepower out of a 4-cylinder today is pretty solid. I mean, new Golf GTIs and things like that, standard 4-cylinder, you know, consumer cars don't usually make 282 horsepower still. They're usually still making in the mid 200s. Some of them obviously make much more, like the S3 and other cars like that, more higher trim performance cars. But 282 horsepower of a 4-cylinder back then, a lot of V8s weren't even making that. Interestingly, on the EV-1, the whole chassis and everything, the body was made out of so many different materials. The roof was made out of glass, the body itself was made out of steel, but the bumpers were made out of some sort of composite material that included carbon fiber, so very futuristic for It's crazy to think almost 40 years ago that when the bumper was hit, it was supposed to sort of retract and form back to the shape that it should have had before it was hit. You can see looking at the design here, it also had, there's the standard 900 power plant under the hood. When I say standard, I mean very beefed up power plant. You can see a suspension is even set up in the same way. But it almost has these weird looking windows here, this huge glass hatch, which almost reminds me of something out of a Porsche 944 from that era. These seats were actually out of a Corvette from what I read, and this dash and everything from what I saw at least was very similar to the 900 and even included features like night panel, which they actually discuss right here. It also had some super low mounted headlights. I mean, these things are, you look at where they are in comparison to the wheels, very low to the ground. And like they mentioned here in the Motor Trend article, they weren't really building this for production. They kind of wanted to just show, look, we can build sporty cars. We built the 99 Turbo in the past. Obviously, this is around the time, I believe the SPG was already out, but they said, look, we're capable of doing some really cool, crazy, sporty cars. Here we have the Wikipedia article, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things that they have here. Again, these articles will all be linked at the top of the description. Here they actually cite 285 horsepower instead of 282, but they also mention a top speed of 168 miles an hour. By modern car standards, I mean your performance cars like M3s, RS3s, AMGs can obviously exceed that, but the average commuter car even today isn't even exceeding 168 miles an hour. So it's crazy to think that, you know, even entry-level luxury cars and sports cars today are maybe touching that, outside of the ones that I just mentioned, which are, you know, kind of a step above that. But even then, for that car to reach 168 miles an hour and 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds, I'm assuming while accomplishing a lot of wheel spin in the process, that's pretty freaking cool, I think. A little bit more information about the solar roof here. It included 66 solar cells that were mounted directly to the glass roof, and the device actually cooled the car when it was parked in sunlight, which to me at least, being in a hotter climate seems kind of counterintuitive. If I want my car to be cool, I park it in my garage, and during the summer, if I park it outside, I fully expect to suffer when I'm first get into it. So I don't know how well that would have worked in theory in warmer climates, but it is at least a cool idea for somewhere like Sweden. It does also note that the windshield is wraparound and very deep and steeply inclined for the era. From what I can see from this picture here, when I first read that sentence, it made me think classic 900. If you missed the video where I talked about the driving experience of that car, click up in the top corner to watch it. But I talked about how upright the windshield is, how much it wraps around. The A-pillars are almost like right at your face. They're so far back compared to the 9.3, S3, pretty much all modern cars. It mentions that about this car too, although from looking at it, it's kind of like at a 45-degree angle, so I'd say it's probably a little bit more right up than the average car. Last little fun fact, and I teased this at the beginning of the video, was that this car was featured in a very famous film. That's actually Back to the Future Part 2. I just realized I had it open on my screen this whole time, so probably spoiled that for you guys that might have not already known that. But here's a screen grab from the movie, and you can see the EV-1 sitting right there. So that's super cool, and I think for kind of the vibe that that movie has, that car fits in perfectly. But let me know what you guys think of the EV-1 down below in the comments. I think it would be an absolute riot to drive something like that. Just a very old school analog car with just way too much power for the front wheels. And I feel like it would just be a joy to just freaking rip on that thing and drive around. Outside of looking really unique and futuristic for the time. That's all I've got for today, guys. I'll hopefully catch you again soon. I'll see you next time.
Take it easy.